You're listening to Inside Israel Today with Gil Hoffman on the Land of Israel Network.
Good morning and welcome to Inside Israel Today here on the Land of Israel Network on the landofisrael.com, where we are on a very exciting and special day here in Israeli politics, where the people of Israel might be choosing our next prime minister. Wait a second. It's not April 9th. It's not the date of the election. Well, it is the date of the Likud primary. And with all due respect to Benny Gantz and Yair Lapid, whose events I've covered lately, and they do certainly think that they're going to be elected on April 9th, the most likely scenario, I think they'd even admit in closed conversations, is that Netanyahu will remain the prime minister after that election, at least for another few months. Eventually, though, there will be an indictment of the prime minister, not the indictment pending a hearing that's going to happen in a couple of weeks that people are going to make a very big deal out of, but legally is not a big deal. But the real thing, the indictment, is expected to come sometime by the end of 2019. And then whatever government Netanyahu would form the last week of May, first week of June, will most likely then fall apart. And then it could very well be that somebody in the Likud will then be asked to form a government. And who better to form a government than whoever wins the Likud primary today and gets the exclusive number 2 slot on the Likud list. Now, there's nothing in the Likud that says that automatically the number 2 gets to be the leader of the party. There's no vice leader of the party. There's no vice prime minister in Israel. There's a lot of vice in Israel, but no, there's no deputy. So, yet, this is an election where you have 120,000 Likud members eligible to vote. There's like 200 candidates. And if they choose one person over all of the others, then that will certainly give that person a very big advantage in the next race. Or perhaps 2 or 3 people will be above all the others and separate themselves from the field. And then from then on, those 2 or 3 people will be the competitors in a virtual election that has not yet begun for the next leader of the ruling party. And therefore, perhaps, a very good chance, the next prime minister of Israel. So you need to be following very closely. There are a lot of candidates who see themselves in Likud as the next leader of the party, as the next prime minister. The ones who have the best chance are Yuli Edelstein, Speaker of the Knesset, a very worldly person who was the last refusenik, they were called, prisoner in the Soviet Union who was put in jail just for wanting to live in Israel and wanting to practice Judaism. He was the last one released from prison because he refused to pretend and admit that to the trumped-up drug charges that he was put in jail for. There's Transportation Minister Israel Katz, who's built railways and high-speed roads all over the country, though the railway from Jerusalem isn't really going too well right now. There's Miri Regev, who is the cultural hero of the Likud underclass, and certainly wouldn't be able to represent Israel abroad very well, but internally is very much someone who knows how to speak to traditional Likud voters. And there's Gilad Erdan, who was the number 2 in the party this past election, though as police minister ran into political problems, didn't succeed in appointing a new police chief. And then there's the dark horse candidate. There's Gideon Sa'ar. Gideon Sa'ar was number 2 a couple times in Likud before he decided to take a break from politics, unlike others who left Likud, who left the number 2 slot in Likud, like Moshe Kachlon, and formed their own party. Gideon Sa'ar stayed loyal to Likud. Gideon Sa'ar remained a member of Likud the entire time, and he decided to spend time with his family when he realized there was a glass ceiling in the party as long as Netanyahu was there. Now he's come back in order to prepare for that Likud race that there'll be later on. And Sa'ar has been very careful, has not said anything against Netanyahu, except Netanyahu has really started a fight with him. Now 3 times over the last couple months, Netanyahu has put out statements accusing Gideon Sa'ar of undermining him, bringing no proof whatsoever. Netanyahu has now done it again. His son did it again. He's been very openly starting a fight against Gideon Sa'ar, and Sa'ar has just said, I didn't do anything he's accusing me of. I don't know why he's accusing me. But the truth is, ladies and gentlemen, Netanyahu has helped Gideon Sa'ar a lot. He was out of politics. People could have forgotten about him. People could have forgotten whatever his accomplishments were in the cabinet posts that he held before. And here you have the Prime Minister of Israel, no less, building him up, talking about him over and over and over again, really making him into the alternative leader of Likud, and helping Sa'ar by making it clear that for his primary race, if he does well, he can say, look, I did this despite Bibi. And if he does badly in today's Likud primary, he can say, well, Netanyahu was there trying to assassinate me politically. This is a great accomplishment that I'm 15th on the list in spite of Netanyahu working so hard. It's a win-win situation for Gideon Sa'ar and a very big political risk for Netanyahu. And so we're going to be looking very closely at who's number 2 on the list, at who's number 3 on the list behind Netanyahu, and wherever Gideon Sa'ar happens to be will be the big headline. Now, I also want our listeners and our readers in the Jerusalem Post to pay attention to the North American candidates that there are. And yes, there are. Every time there end up being North American candidates. In the past, we had Tal Brody, a great basketball star who is from Trenton, New Jersey, but played for the University of Illinois and then played for the Israeli basketball team and helped Israel defeat the Soviet Union in a very exciting historical game for Israel. And you've had other people run whose names may not mean as much to you, but are really good people like Mitchell Barak and Daniel Tauber and Mordechai Taub and Yechiel Leiter, who was Netanyahu's top aide for many years and was the Director General of the Education Ministry. They all tried and failed in Likud primaries. And so I wish luck to the North Americans who are running today. You have the only incumbent Likud MK who is a citizen of the United States, Yehuda Glick. Really, really nice man. I attended his wedding last week. He had been married to a very nice lady for many years, and he was with her by her side when she died. And he met, in his role as a Knesset member, a woman who heads an association that helps widows, who happened to be a widow, and they got closer. And then in one of the last sessions of the Knesset before it disbanded for the election, Yehuda Glick has announced that he had a big declaration to make, and people thought, oh, he's not running again, he's quitting the Knesset or whatever, and he said, no, my announcement is that I'm getting married and that everyone is invited. And you know what? Everybody came. It was pretty packed over there last week at the Hebrew University, where he got married to this nice lady, Hadass. So Yehuda Glick, of course, had to renounce his American citizenship. When he entered the Knesset, you can't be a citizen of another country when you're a member of the parliament. But he is still someone who represented American people in Israel very well. And then you have the other Knesset member who was a North American citizen, Sharon Haskell. She was born in Toronto. Her father still lives in Toronto. She was educated in Australia, where she got a veterinary degree. And she, in this Knesset, has done an amazing job representing Israel around the world using her beautiful English. She was part of the border police. She's a really tough young lady who really presented a good image of Israel. Then there are candidates that are lesser known who are running for the first time in the Likud primary. There's a fellow who was the city council member of Jerusalem for a long time, whose name is Yair Gabai, and his father was a Knesset member in the National Religious Party. His father happened to have been born in Baghdad, is very much Iraqi, but his mother is a New York Jew, and because of that, Yair Gabai is a citizen of the United States. There's Netanyahu's former chief of staff, David Sharon, whose family is from America and who lived on and off in Los Angeles as a child, graduated from high school over there, and rose to important roles in Netanyahu's government. But he also fell, and the police have recommended bribery charges against him in Case 3000, which is the submarine affair. And Netanyahu recommending him is seen as not such a kosher thing, because if David Sharon gets into the Knesset, he gets immunity from prosecution. There are those who say that that is why he is running. The final North American citizen running is a fellow named Ziv Agmon, who is from Chicago, who grew up in the same community of Israeli expats in Chicago as I did, in which the current mayor of Chicago, Rahm Emanuel, is very much a part of. Rahm's father, Dr. Benjamin Emanuel, was Ziv's pediatrician growing up, was my pediatrician growing up, which makes us very close to City Hall there in Chicago, but does not make us like Rahm's former boss, Barack Obama, anymore. Now, Ziv is the only candidate who is currently an American citizen and who was born in the United States, who is running out of the 200-something Likud candidates in today's primary. And so we wish Ziv well. He's running for a slot reserved for a candidate who lives in the Galilee region. And he almost got into the last Knesset. In fact, still, if any current Likud Knesset member out of the 30 quits ahead of the April 9th election for any reason, Ziv will be a Knesset member because he is next on the list. He's running for a higher slot than he did last time, and anything can happen. Let's not forget that in the New Right Party, there is not only Naftali Bennett, whose family, of course, is from San Francisco, and Ayelet Shaked, there is also Carolyn Glick, another former Chicagoan running. And so, assuming Carolyn Glick gets in, and if Ziv Agmon will get in, there can be 2 Chicago-born Knesset members, which would be so exciting for me as a Chicagoan. Then, if there are 2 Chicagoan Knesset members, all Chicago will then need is an NBA team. That's what they're sorely lacking right now. A team that can represent Chicago and play basketball in a way that is not embarrassing. After the break, we will be continuing our series here on Inside Israel Today of speaking to candidates for Knesset. And I'm excited to tell you that today's candidate will be Mehereta Baruch-Ron, who is an immigrant from Ethiopia, who made a name for herself by competing in the reality show Hashagrir, the Ambassador, that ran many years ago, and she finished second in this competition to represent Israel abroad. The person who finished first, Eitan Schwartz, later on became the spokesman for Tel Aviv. Mehereta became the deputy mayor of Tel Aviv, which is better than Eitan, I guess. And she is now running for Knesset with the Meretz party, and I believe will be the first Meretz person ever to be interviewed on the Land of Israel network. Stay with us.
Tune in this week to Israel Uncensored with Josh Haston for an exclusive interview with Knesset insider and Mehereta City Council member Jeremy Sultan on the New Yamin Party, headed by Naftali Bennett and Ayelet Shaked.
When Naftali Bennett sits down with the Prime Minister, assuming it's Netanyahu, and he can say,
I'm pretty sure
you're confident?
I'm very confident that he's
Right.
going to
Okay.
look. People can look at the numbers in the polls, but the blocks don't change. And as long as the right-wing bloc is ahead of the left-wing bloc, I don't think that Netanyahu's premiership is in any doubt.
That's Israel Uncensored with Josh Haston on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com.
And we're back here on Inside Israel Today on the Land of Israel Network, on the landofisrael.com, where I have the exciting privilege to speak to Mehereta Baruch-Ron, who's a candidate for Knesset, who many years ago I had the privilege of cheering for every week on the fun reality show, The Ambassador, where the contestants competed over who would represent Israel abroad. Mehereta, thank you for coming here on Inside Israel Today.
Hello, Gil. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Please tell us. I got to watch you on the show every week and learn about your background.
Well, Gil, it's been a while. You should tell that for your audience.
How many years ago was that?
Ago. It's already more than 13 years ago.
More than 13 years ago.
Yeah.
So for those of us who didn't watch you 13 years ago on the reality show, tell our listeners your background of how you came to Israel.
Well, I actually was born in Ethiopia. I'm part of the Jewish community in Ethiopia who was, separated from the Jewish world for many, many years, for thousands of years, and kept its Jewish identity for many years, in times that it was very, very difficult, and in times that our community, the Jewish community in Ethiopia, was very dominant, and we had the queens and kings, but our hope was to eventually get to Jerusalem, and because this is the land of the Jewish nation, and this is the place that we can practice Judaism without being in danger, practice Judaism on the Holy Land. So in the 80s, early 80s and 70s, there was possibility to fulfill this dream of Jerusalem, and actually in the late 70s, families left their villages and started a journey on foot, escaping from Ethiopia, because in that time Ethiopia was a Marxist country and it didn't allow us to leave Ethiopia. And actually we started a journey escaping from Ethiopia to the Sudanian border, to a refugee camp in Sudan. And we've been told that when we get there, someone will take care of us. I guess someone was the State of Israel, the Mossad. But it was a difficult journey, and the time that we spent in refugee camp in Sudan was very, very difficult, and it took more time than we thought. And actually, Jews who got to those refugee camps were stuck for years sometimes, and because of the difficult sanitary situation in Sudan, living in a refugee camp, made a major part of our community actually died there, a quarter of the Jews who did this journey to the refugees, to Sudan and to the refugee camps, a quarter of them died in Sudan. So it was a journey with a very high price, but I was lucky to survive it and to eventually get Medalia to Israel with two of my sisters, and I was at the age of 10 absorbed in boarding school in Israel because I came without my parents. For me to be a girl coming from the villages of Ethiopia to the modern Israeli society, and was really, really, really something, and many things that I had to learn, and to many language that I had to learn, and everything around me was new. So in a way, it was like being born again, and
Wow.
even reading and writing, I didn't know even in my own language, in Amharic. So this was at the age of 10 in Israel was the first time that I started learning to read and write at any language.
And this story helped you advance on that reality show because every time you told it, people were wowed.
So on that reality show, I think people were very much interested to hear the Jewish story in a different perspective, in the Jewish nation story, the story of our state, in the eyes of a community who really dreamed about Jerusalem, about Zion, and made an exodus, a modern exodus, to get to Israel. That was a beautiful story to tell the world, and that's how I think I was succeeding in that program and became eventually. I didn't win,
You finished second.
Second.
And you got to be the winner. It just became the spokesman for the Tel Aviv mayor. You got to be the deputy mayor.
Yeah. Yes, a deputy mayor is a job that I had in the last 5 years. I was. It's already a politic. I was elected on behalf of Meretz party to be nominated
city council member.
As a city council member in Tel Aviv, and fortunately I got the support of the Meretz voters, and I became eventually a deputy mayor in Tel Aviv for 5 years, which was really very, very interesting and very educating. Those are 5 years that I learned that if you care about society and if you really want to make a difference, you have to be in a decision-making table. And I could see that in Tel Aviv, how important it was that I was part of the decision makers, that I could bring my point of view to the table, so it can be considered. I can tell you a little.
Tell us one of your accomplishments that you did as deputy mayor.
I was fortunate to do really many good things, but to make a point about the importance of being part of the decision makers, I want to tell you a little story. When I became a deputy mayor, and I was looking around the city on their the publishing, the presenters of the city and the programs of the city. I saw the models, and the models in many times were very blonde and European look children. I like Europeans, and I married to one of them. But I thought that it's not okay that we can only see European presenters presenting our city. What does it mean about us? What does it mean about being the tolerant city that we are, and it's not shown outside? So once I brought this point of view to the table, things dramatically changed. So it's important to say that there was no, any attention to discriminate or to take out people like me from those advertisements. It just, there was no people with the point of view of mine to bring that to the table. That's why it is so important to be part of the decision makers in a table. You have to be around the table in order to change, in order to express yourself, and to make sure that your desires are taken into consideration. That's why I think that it's also important to me to continue and do that work, and to bring that point of view also in the Knesset.
Yes, why are you running for Knesset? That's a place where so many people go and don't accomplish anything because of the system.
Eventually, the decisions that affect our life made in the Knesset. We don't like many of the people that are representing us in the Knesset, but the fact is the decisions are made over there. So you have to be there. I have to be there in order to bring my voice, in order to bring the voice of equality, the voice of justice, the voice of social responsibility, welfare. So I decided to be nominated on behalf of Meretz Party, which I'm very proud to be part of in the last 6 years, and to be nominated to the Knesset.
So our last question will be, there are currently 3 Ethiopian immigrants in the Knesset, Pnina Tamano-Shata from Yesh Atid, Avraham Nagosa from Likud, and there's a new Knesset member from Kulanu who didn't get to do anything in the Knesset, but is there now. What would you do differently? How can you help Ethiopian immigrants if you get elected to the Knesset?
Well, first of all, I'm nominated, and I want to be elected to present, to bring the voice of equality. But I'm not going to represent only my community. So we need to look for the party that its foundation is equality, and that is Meretz.
Got it. Well, thank you so much for coming here on Inside Israel today. When is your primary in Meretz?
It's 14 of February.
February 14th, which is
10 days.
Valentine's Day in America. We'll see if the Meretz members...
So we are going to celebrate twice.
We'll see if the Meretz members end up showing you the love, Mehereta.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Gil.
Good luck, and listeners, we will continue to bring you many voices from across the political map here inside Israel today ahead of the April 9th election. Thank you for being with us, and have a wonderful day and week from here in Jerusalem. Bye-bye.
The question is, why are the Jews there in the first place? The Jewish people have been yearning to return to their ancient homeland for a long time.
The Yishai Fleischer Show, the voice of a new generation of pro-Israel activists.
And there's only 2 kinds of minorities in the Middle East, armed or unarmed.
Inspiring minds to think differently.
That jihadism doesn't just attack Jews. It attacks Christians, and it mostly attacks Muslims.
Inspiration, spirituality, and politics.
So first and foremost, this country is here to defend Jewish people and to live in its ancestral homeland.
Listen to the Yishai Fleischer Show every week on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com.